Hello and welcome back. In this Black Excellist series, we will highlight the reason why most Black Americans live within this circle.
Welcome to blackexcellist.com, the site where we share Black excellence, opulence, and affluence. Our mission is to inspire you as we enlighten you.
The Black population of the United States is growing. In 2019, there were 46.8 million people who self-identified as being of Black descent, making up roughly 14% of the country's population. This marks an almost 30% increase since 2000. But as much as Black America is growing, it is also starting to coalesce into one area, one region, one part of the country, and that is the South. At the start of World War I, African Americans chose to uproot themselves from their longtime homes in the South by the droves. They took a major leap of faith, praying that a better life awaited them in the promised land of the North. But the surging number of Black migrants were met with higher costs of living, overcrowded cities, crime infestation, and the same old racism, just a different location. Now, nearly 100 years later, we are seeing a reversal of the Great Migration. Black families, professionals, baby boomers, and college grads are returning to the New South, creating an epicenter of Black culture and Black excellence in southern metropolitan areas. In this original Black Excellist video, we will highlight 10 reasons why most of Black America are living within this circle. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 1. Millions of enslaved Africans were brought to America and concentrated in the Southeast. The history of African Americans in the South dates back to 1619, when a ship headed towards San Juan, Mexico, was intercepted by 2 pirate ships. The pirates expected to steal precious metals like gold and silver, but to their surprise, they found that the ship held 350 Black Africans. The pirates sold 32 of the best and healthiest slaves to the English colony of Jamestown, who had hopes that slave labor would help expand the colony. Between 1619 and the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, 4 million Black Africans were sold into slavery and brought to the 13 colonies as they expanded rapidly. The majority of the enslaved were concentrated in the Southeast, with only 10% of enslaved Africans being brought to the North. The invention of the cotton gin caused massive growth in the production of cotton in the United States, concentrated mostly in the South. With cotton becoming a tremendously profitable business, the region became even more dependent on intensive human labor, and therefore an increased demand for slaves in the South. Along with the development of the colonies in the Southeast, African Americans became weaved into the commercial, legal, political, and social fabric of the Southern states, and thus shaping the way of life in these Southern states. Number 2. Freedmen remained in the South even after emancipation due to uncertainty. To understand why 60% of Blacks live in the South, we must first explore why Blacks remained in the South after obtaining their liberty. One of the most important reasons was uncertainty. Free Negroes couldn't be so sure things would be better for them in the North. In many cases, they were right. In a post-Civil War era, there were white Northerners who were rising up against their most successful African American neighbors, burning and destroying churches, businesses, schools, orphanages, meeting halls, farms, and entire communities. Northerners also segregated schools, public transportation, and public accommodations. Therefore, the vision of the liberal North embracing African Americans and protecting their rights is a persistent myth. And these horrific stories traveled south. Black Southerners heard accounts of violence against Black Americans, along with the destruction of Black neighborhoods in the North. This provided enough evidence for many of Blacks in the South to conclude that it would be best to stay in an area that may be racist, but at least it's a land that they're familiar with. They could not classify the North as a freedmen's paradise when white Northerners responded to the increasing Black population growth with an equal amount of cruelty, unimaginable atrocities, and even death that was seen in the South. Number 4. Texas has become a Black Mecca after Juneteenth. By the mid-1800s, slavery played an important role in Texas's economic development. and in fact, enslaved African Americans comprised 30% of the state's population by 1860. This population included free and enslaved Black and mixed-race people, as interracial marriage was legal and very common. The enslaved population was afforded some rights under Spanish rule, including the right to purchase freedom, protest against abuse, or obtain new masters if they were being treated unfairly. Though African people occupied the lower end of the Casta's racial categorization system of Spanish Texas, some African and mixed-race people were able to ascend the classification system by gaining wealth and prestige through their labor freedom. This prosperity accelerated for the African American in Texas on June 19, 1865, known as Juneteenth, when the news finally reached Blacks living in Texas that they were free. From that point until 1930, African Americans accumulated land and founded 557 historic Black settlements or freedom colonies in the state of Texas. In these places, Black Texans could much better avoid the perils of debt bondage, sharecropping, and racialized violence from white communities, and live largely self-sustaining, independent lives on their own property. And the majority of these known freedom colonies were located in the eastern half of Texas. The eastern half of the state contained a majority of the farmland and plantations on which the formerly enslaved once worked. Further, these coastal and flood-prone areas were areas that whites found less desirable for land ownership. In some cases, African Americans could obtain land through adverse possession or squatting. In other cases, though rare, former plantation owners willed land to their Black offspring. Today, Texas has one of the largest African American populations in the country, with close to 4 million living in the Lone Star State. African Americans are concentrated in northern, eastern, and east central Texas, as well as the Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio metropolitan areas. Although Texas may have the reputation of being hostile to African Americans, Houston is known as a center of African American political power, education, economic prosperity, and culture, often called an emerging Black Mecca. This has helped it become the city with the largest Black population west of the Mississippi River. Number 5. The reverse migration is quietly reshaping the New South. The first Great Migration for Black Americans began during World War I and continued until 1940, with the second wave hitting its high point during World War II and lasting until 1970. During both migrations, nearly 6 million Blacks left their homes in the South for northern and western states to find work in private and public sectors of the economy. They also wanted to leave the racial segregation, lynching, bigotry, violence, and disenfranchisement in the South behind. Upon arriving in the North and West, however, Black migrants unsurprisingly faced widespread racial discrimination there as well, being perceived as competitors for jobs and housing, and blamed for lowering the property values of white residents. Despite this, conditions in the North and Western U.S. were still ahead of the South at that time. Blacks could better exercise their right to vote, could send their children to better schools, and were paid more for skilled and unskilled labor. For most of the 20th century, Blacks were buying one-way tickets out of the Jim Crow South in hopes of a better life. They did not imagine that their children and grandchildren would someday lead a return migration, chasing the American dream back down below the Mason-Dixon line into the Deep South. Researchers noticed in the 2000 census that the South posted its first Black population increase in more than a century. By 2010, about 57% of the nation's African Americans were living in the South. Many former destinations for Black migrants, including Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Los Angeles, New York, and Philadelphia, actually registered losses in their Black populations. Today, over 60% of the African American population call the Southeast home as a result of what is referred to as the New Great Migration, Reverse Migration, or Black Exodus. Number 6. The South is becoming a magnet in the past 30 years. The South, to be sure, has been a population magnet for people of all races since the end of World War II. It has a way of resonating with African Americans, however. No matter what part of the country you live in, many African Americans have some sort of Southern ties, either through family reunions, church homecomings, or as alumni of an HBCU in the South. With these kindred connections, Black Americans feel that they are returning to their spiritual homeland, but many feel that they are returning to a heartland they never left. And here are the stats. The percentage of Black Americans who live in the South has seen significant increases since 1990, and the biggest gains have been in the region's large urban areas. The Black population of Metro Atlanta, for example, more than doubled between 1990 and 2020, surpassing 2 million in the most recent census, with the city overtaking Chicago as the second largest concentration of African Americans in the country after metropolitan New York. The Black population also more than doubled in Metro Charlotte, while Greater Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth both saw their Black populations surpass 1 million for the first time. Several smaller metro areas in the South also saw sizable gains, including San Antonio, Raleigh, and Greensboro, North Carolina, and Orlando. Number 7. Black college graduates and professionals are seeking better job opportunities in the South. Young Black college-educated professionals are a major segment of Black Americans resettling in the New South. Their decisions are driven by a combination of economic realities, historical curiosity, and the old-fashioned American drive to explore new frontiers and create new worlds. But let's face it, the promise of a bigger paycheck is usually not enough to motivate someone to uproot and land in another state. Therefore, it's also the simple desire of a mobile society to start fresh in a region where the cost of living is cheaper, chances of entrepreneurship are higher, the quality of life is better, and the promise of the American dream is brighter. For instance, from 1965 to 2000, the states of Florida, Georgia, and Texas attracted the most Black college graduates of any other state, simply because of their state's widespread prosperity. The only state outside of the South that attracted a sizable migration of Black college graduates was Maryland, as a result of the population growth surrounding Washington, D.C. Even a state that many would consider a dark horse, South Carolina has added nearly 65,000 residents of all races between 2018 and 2019, becoming the 6th fastest growing state. It is now home to more than 5 million people, and the Black population had been the second largest contributor to population growth since 2010. Number 8. Black retirees are migrating to the South with new energy and lots of resources. And let's not forget the African American retirees and snowbirds who are migrating to the South with the economy being a major impetus. These newcomers are older Black people in or nearing retirement with stable incomes from pensions, Social Security benefits, and other assets. Their narratives follow the same thread: the pull of a cultural homeland, yearning for warmer weather, and lower living costs to help stretch their dollars is part of the allure to the South. These senior newcomers include college professors and administrators, doctors, corporate executives, ambassadors, politicians, and journalists. They've lived in major cities, mainly in the North and Midwest, and enjoyed impressive careers that have taken them all over the country and the world. Now they come with wealth, talent, experience, and connections with the zeal of making a mark on their new hometowns. This influx of retired Black professionals enjoy the southern urban centers that provide direct flights, excellent hospital systems, excellent nightlife and entertainment options, close proximity to the beach, good restaurants, arts, and culture. And many of them are committed to helping the local community and are getting involved in civic affairs again after being so involved in their demanding corporate careers. Black retirees are also eyeing real estate and opportunities to own land, a dream that is more realistic and affordable in the South than it is in the congested North. Owning land is a key component of Southern identity, and owning land has been a symbol of pride, wealth, and political clout. But not only does investing in real estate help ensure financial security, it also contributes to the portfolio of wealth and legacy to leave behind for loved ones. Black retirees migrating to the South is not only culturally and sociologically significant, but it's also historically important. These are African American pioneers, the vanguard of our race, who were the first in their families to go to college, first to work in corporate America, first to achieve upward mobility, and first to build generational wealth for future Black families to come after them. Number 9. Indictment of Northern states' failures. Some critics, in fact, have portrayed the reverse migration as an indictment of the urban North, as a flight from the lack of jobs, the abundance of mean streets, and the growing social woes of northern cities. For many families who were part of the mass exodus of the North, they soon discovered that the city life was becoming too dangerous for their families. It's not 1854 anymore. Alabama is a new frontier and a wonderful place for opportunities. A large number of young, middle-class, college-educated professionals are helping integrate the urban centers in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama. What was once considered Confederate states now have a few cities within their borders that offer new frontiers and wonderful places of opportunities. Number 10. A Black experience and culture you'll only find in the South. The Black experience in the South has its own vibe, rhythm, Black culture, and history that can only be found in these cities and regions. And if you're fortunate enough to have family members in the vicinity, the Black experience in the southern urban centers is unparalleled. Along with the experience of the music, culture, and food, the historical heritage of the South is also fortified with connections through church, fraternities, sororities, and local civic organizations. Moving to the South puts you, as an African American, in touch with a legacy of liberation that our ancestors left us. This is where we learned resistance and resilience in the face of injustice. The South produced the strongest and most effective of our civil rights leaders, and the rural South led the way to integrate public transportation and sit-ins to challenge the segregation of public facilities. Black Americans have found that cities in the Southeast deliver on affordability, diversity, supportive entrepreneurial environments, vibrant Southern lifestyle, and celebration of Black history and culture. For Black people, the South is our homeland away from home. We were divorced from our native soil on the African continent and shipped to agricultural regions of North America. The South is as close as many African Americans will get to our past. Migration trends are showing that Blacks are not moving to all parts of the South, just the urban areas and the more cosmopolitan cities. The rural towns can still be extremely unfriendly to Black men and women, but the promise of the South is that if racial progress can happen here, then it can happen anywhere.
We appreciate the fact that you stayed with us until the end. Thank you for spending time with us, and don't forget to like this video. Also, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss a video. Bye for now. We will see you tomorrow.